Hello, Abigail here with the astrology for this week. This week, there are some activating points, but it does also feel a bit like the quiet, the calm before the storm. Also, something I want to integrate into these videos is just where the moon is going to be. I'm not going to really track the aspects yet because I feel like that's going to make this video extra long, and I'm not sure how I want to do this, but join me on this journey. But this week, starting on Monday, the moon will be in the early degrees of Taurus. And then by the end of this week on Sunday, we'll be in the mid degrees of Cancer, right up against that Mars. And then, of course, the next week, we go from that over to um, the early degrees of Libra. So in this week, check out where, Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer are in your chart. If they're in the bottom of your chart, you might be looking at more personal topics, more intimacy, more kind of having to work through kind of the subculture of your life. If it's in the upper part of your chart, like mine is, this is a week for connections and integration and working on the things that we want to be known for and seen for. Also, be aware that if it is in the upper part of your chart, with the exception of the 12th house, if it is in the upper part of your chart, well, and the 8th, then, this is also a very high visibility place, especially if it's where it is in my chart, which is ninth, 10th, and 11th. So if you're a Virgo rising like me, then you are going to get a lot of interaction and connectivity and visibility. There's no negative or positive connotation. What will be, but it kind of can give you a good vibe if we're looking at kind of maybe, let's say you're a Taurus rising, you're going to get a certain level of focus on you and then also dealing with personal connections and the things that are closest to home. And then that kind of just tracks across the chart. If we get into the fourth and the fifth and the sixth house, then we're looking at, um, you know, at home and our creativity and the ways in which we work in the mundane. So yeah, just play around with that. See what happens. It's really fun to track lunar cycles, and um, I think this is a personal opinion. I think everyone has a couple of lunar events or lunar connections with specific planets that mean a lot in their chart that don't really have technically a rhyme or reason in modern and traditional astrology, but it's very unique to you. I have one with Saturn. Anytime the moon is not anytime the moon is conjunct Saturn, but many big life events have happened for me when the moon is conjunct my Saturn, my natal Saturn. So start paying attention to that. Play with that. Maybe this is something you can do during the Venus retrograde to kind of find some grounding and some footing as we move ahead. Anyways, on to the astrology of this week. On Monday, we do get Mercury into Aries. And this is the, precursor to that retrograde that starts the week after this week. We are going to be in a double Venus retrograde, Mercury retrograde, basically through most of the same degrees together. So buckle up. That's also what I meant when I started this video and said it's kind of the calm before the storm. Yes, we have some activating aspects, but uh, compared to what next week is with that very intense full eclipse in Virgo, and then moving through the eclipse portal, the spring equinox smack in the middle, and then that final Aries eclipse, which has the same Mars degree as that full moon we experienced back in 2024. It's going to be a lot. There's a lot going on. It is intense. Um, that full moon was in October. Just making sure doing this all correctly. So yeah, buckle up. I think it was the 17th of October, 17th or 19th. And then this one is on the 28th of March. So just know, I know you're like, well, Abigail, we're barely into March. We're like, March 3rd starts this week. Yeah, but this is kind of that, we can look at astrology on a micro and a macro level. And the macro level, which is still micro in the astrological terms, is this whole kind of next month of event after event after event, sitting in that eclipse portal on top of the change and the energy that comes from the spring equinox. I always say this, and it's always true, but it depends on like the timing of things. But this is one of those times where you're not going to recognize yourself on the other side, or at least you're going to be like, oh, the person that was me 4 weeks ago had no concept of what I'm experiencing right now, and that has forever changed me. Once again, it is neither good or bad. Now, of course, we're going to have things that we enjoy more and things we enjoy less. And in eclipses, bad things can happen and do happen, but it's not helpful to doom and gloom and to expect every eclipse cycle to ruin your life. Um, Eclipses just speed up time, and how I view it is they kind of bring to fruition things that were already set in motion. So it just makes things happen faster. Um, if you are struggling with a partner and you are always going to break up, that breakup will just happen faster. You were always going to break up. If you were meant to move somewhere and um, in the eclipse you will move or at least have all those plans put down, you were already meant to move there. It just happened faster. So just keep that in perspective that it is simply kind of a warp of time. And remember that time is not actually real. It is a way that we find it's how we, with the brains that we have, kind of understand things and can kind of keep things together. Um, that time does not work the way that we say it works. It's a made up concept to help us survive and to track time. And, for better or for worse, has been used to make us productive or to force us to do things. And so I think all of us have a complex relationship with time. And it's important, especially when talking about planets like Saturn and Pluto, to understand that time is still something that we have created, that it can move in multiple different ways. This is just the way that we as humans have chosen to digest it as a group. And no, I don't agree with the calendar and the, the cycles that we use in modern times. That is a whole different story, and I will not get on my anti Gregorian calendar soapbox. Anyways, and then, excuse me, on Wednesday, so we have this Mercury moving into Aries. It does feel invigorating and it does feel this need to kind of express ourselves and maybe a bit of frustration and urgency. However, we are still in the shadow of this pre retrograde. So things are already starting to unravel a little bit and the chaos is heightening and we're moving closer and closer to that eclipse. And then on Wednesday, we get Pluto sextile Mercury. And yes, I am finally adding in sextiles, which the only reason I didn't before is because I was doing a lot more short form content and I just could not fit them in. But this one I think is really important because we have Mercury sextile Pluto, and Pluto is over in the early degrees of Aquarius. And so, in the middle of this week where it almost feels like we're in a vacuum, there are secrets and deep truths and maybe painful understandings that are at our not at our beck and call, but we have access to them through the sextile. And if you remember, sextiles are an invigorating aspect. They play off of each other. They're like good friends that have maybe opposing personalities, but that kind of brings out the best in both. It can be a challenge, but it's more of like a dare when that happens with an aspect. It really does get things done. And when I see sextile aspects in synastry, it's not really a huge marker if we're talking about romantic. It's not really a huge marker of romance per se, but it is a great marker of friendship and camaraderie, which is not bad to have in a long-term partnership or short-term partnership. It's a great sextiles are great to have children to parents. It allows you to be different, but also reciprocal with, the different energies that you have. And so in this, we have this, very kind of cerebral Pluto and Aquarius and this very spicy Mercury that is playful and fun, and they get to feed into each other. And we are allowed to have access to things that maybe we didn't before. If you felt betrayed recently or need answers, Wednesday's a good day to kind of at least sit with why you feel that way. As a Virgo, it's also a great day to do some snooping within reason. Let's not stalk anyone. But yeah, be playful, dig in. I will say once you go down a rabbit hole, it is going to become very serious and very intense very quickly because Pluto is involved. But it is a day for discovery and understanding, and it makes me kind of it's almost like someone going into a cave with like a flashlight or a torch and going in and discovering and finding new things. Is a little dangerous and scary, yes. But there are a lot of riches and twists and turns that we might find on this Wednesday that really is going to help us. And some tools that we find there, I think, are going to help us as we move into kind of the deep dark of the Venus retrograde. the deep dark of eclipse season. And then on Friday, we get the sun trine Mars. So I know I said that it's kind of like a vacuum this week, and it is. But as we head into next week, moving into that trine on Friday, we are going to start to feel that kind of pickup towards those eclipses, especially with, Mars being the ruler of the second eclipse and the ruler of Aries season. The quickening of spring is coming. The sun trine Mars is kind of heralding it. Um, you know, Trines are often lauded as easy aspects, and I heard them really well described. Gosh, I think Robert Hand. Anyways, is a very well known older astrologer. I think his name is Robert Hand. If not, I'm sorry, I have dyslexia. I don't remember names. I try. Um, but he said, trines are kind of a flow of what is and what has been, and they're enjoyable because they are familiar. And this is me paraphrasing and also adding my own words, so I'm not quoting. And squares are activating, and squares get things done. And yeah, maybe there's a delay, or maybe a square causes friction, but you need friction to get traction. Also, you need friction to pick up speed. Depending on what kind of friction, it can derail you, but you need that resistance in order to get going. So, with this trine, it's a moment to just enjoy. It's a moment to let Mars and the sun have this beautiful conversation, to kind of chat back and forth, and to feel the build and the activation as Mars is finally moving direct. It's still at 17 degrees where it's stationed, but we are slowly, astrological minute by astrological minute, moving into the future. And I do think this is going to really activate and kick off that feeling of being swept off our feet by the eclipse. We're already getting that with Venus pre-shadow back in January, where that started. And, once we hit Pisces season, we're definitely in eclipse season, but that feeling of kind of being carried off, I definitely think kicks off on this Friday, on the 7th of March. So, it's a really needed aspect. It's an aspect that we've been waiting for. It's an aspect that, we have wanted and desired. And I don't think you need to feel pressured to get anything done, but when you feel like you want to do something, just do it. Um, I don't like, trying to force energy, especially like, yes, Mars is direct, but Mercury is getting closer and closer to that retrograde point, and Venus is already stationed retrograde, and the eclipses are here. So I don't think we need to feel the need to do something. But if that energy comes in and you feel this invigoration and this uptick and this heightened energy, go for it. Do the thing. I will say, however, because we are coming off of that retrograde, and as someone who has chronic illness and does this a lot in their day to day, don't overdo it. Like, do the thing that you want to do. But when you're like, wow, I could do 30 more things, maybe do one more thing. And then just enjoys the invigoration and do something more carefree and more fun, rather than being like, wow, I felt really stuck for a long time, so now I'm going to do, I haven't worked out in like ever since the Mars retrograde, or ever since Mars entered Cancer back in, I want to say January, early January. And now I'm going to do a full set of whatever I do, lifting the full weights that I used to do when I was doing it consistently. Don't pull out, don't throw out your back, is what I'm saying. Like, enjoy the flow, enjoy the energy, do the things that are essential for you to do to enjoy yourself, but know that Mars is going to want to get carried away. And let yourself, but don't go too crazy. Anyways, that is actually the astrology of this week. I do want to, like I said, just kind of remind you that we are in eclipse season. Things are kind of out of our hands, especially now that we're on the other side of that Pisces new moon, which definitely, feels like a turning point in what has been a really tenuous first quarter of the year, to say the least, and we're still in it. Um, but trust. Someone told me this when I got an aura reading earlier this year, as in like end of January, I think. But, they said that the message for me was radical trust. And I do think in this eclipse season that applies to more than just me. We are being asked to trust. It's funny because we're being asked to trust with a South Node in Virgo. And if you've met any Virgos, depending on our chart, we can be pretty trusting. But like, Fool me once, shame on you. And fool me twice, then I'm just dumb. I need to figure it out. So trust and don't feel guilt or shame around not feeling activated and good to go. When you do have a beautiful day like I do where I live, go out and enjoy it. Don't feel the pressure to constantly do in these moments where you get energy because honestly, the energy is more like for a flash in the pan of progress. We're not going to be able to really, unless you have a really unique chart with a lot of retrograded planets like Venus and Mercury, you're not going to really feel like you can be good to go. There are some of you, however, if you have retrograded Venus or retrograded Mercury, depending on where they are, who might be like, wow, my moment to shine. And you should. But that is your unique chart. In general, most of us need to kind of take a chill pill and breathe deeply and, kind of give ourselves the time in between events that are out of our control to regroup so that when those events happen, we have the assets and the resources that we need in order to face them in a healthy way with energy and grace for ourselves in particular. Anyways, my loves, if you have any questions, pop them in the comments. Please like and subscribe. Makes my day. And also helps these videos go further. But yeah, blessed Pisces season. Welcome to the eclipses. They're coming in fast and strong. And welcome to Venus retrograde and almost Mercury retrograde. And we're gonna get through this. We're gonna get through it together. And yeah, it's been tense. But I do wonder if with all of the intensity and the struggle of the Mars retrograde, if there isn't some kind of, in that eclipse portal, some kind of gift or gem or really beautiful moment for us, because the universe doesn't just hand out more than we can deal with all the time. I'm not saying it doesn't happen because I also don't believe it's a very Christian idea to be like, the Lord wouldn't give you more than you can handle. Meanwhile, life is garbage. I think that's a very kind of privileged position to come from. But I do think that the universe is generous. And I do think that with how most of us have been going through it, that in that eclipse portal, it's not just going to be trauma and loss and pain. I think there's going to be some really good gifts, some really unexpected and good things are going to come out of this portal. Um, Also important to note with talking about that Mercury sextile with Pluto, all of the points that we keep hitting in the early degrees of Aries, that Neptune ingress that happens on April 1st, the eventual Saturn ingress, all of it happens sextile to Pluto. These are really big earth-shaking moments in a really kind of sextile vibe with that kind of invigoration when everything seems really down and like it's all going to hell, honestly. Um, Pluto is in there working. Pluto is in there doing what needs to be done in a very Plutonian, background way, especially in a sextile and like trines and squares. It's very highlighted, it's very aggressive. But in a sextile, it's just Pluto doing the paperwork behind the scenes, sorting things out, figuring out problems, bringing us some extra strength. So have faith in that sextile to Pluto, if nothing else.